Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us. Today we continue to talk with Mr. David Pattinson. David, hi. Thank you for being here with us. Today I want to tackle an issue that the last time you were kind of vague about it.
I can't believe I'd ever be vague about anything, Alexandria. That doesn't sound like me.
Let's say you did not properly answer my questions, and I want to dig deeper.
Okay.
And it's actually about the importance of the sexual history in a court case.
Okay.
Yep. Now, I just want to know precisely, why do you think it is important, the sexual history of the accuser in the court?
Well, there's three things we're looking at in a court case. Any court case: was a crime committed? Why was a crime committed? And to what extent is the accused a danger to society going forward? We've kind of got to answer those three questions as a judge and jury cohort. Now, the sexual history of the accuser is relevant if it's relevant to the interaction between the male and the female in the specific case. And sexual history is probably the wrong phrase. I think of it as terms of sexual provocation. To what extent was the man provoked by the woman? You've got to think about these things in a sort of a biological context. Men are attracted to women biologically. It's not a crime for that to be the case. That's been the case through all of time. But we're looking for was a crime committed, and if the woman is just minding her own business, living her life, and the guy's sexually assaulted her through no provocation whatsoever, then there's evidence of criminality there. But if it's been, like we've talked about in a lot of these cases, there's a familiarity between the parties, the man and the woman know each other, there's some sort of relationship there, maybe the woman had gone back to the guy's home, taken all her clothes off, and then decided, hey, I'm not interested in this guy romantically. There is an element of provocation there in a sexual provocation context. If she's walking along the street, going home, wearing a big coat, walking in an opposite direction, she doesn't know this guy from Adam, that's a totally different scenario. What we want to get away from is court cases being used as a sort of a grievance destination for women. If women have got a complaint, they can report it to the police or whatever. But if they want to have counselling or therapeutic services, a courtroom is not for that reason. It's to really look at the person being accused and understand their sort of threat to society going forward. And I believe that any information that can help provide context and understanding to that is relevant. Yeah, that's why I stand behind that statement. So
you agree for this kind of information?
I agree if it's relevant. I think it's on a case-by-case basis. I think judges should be obviously will take control of that decision. Now, what happens in the feminist movement is feminists say, well, if we can't have women's sexual history being discussed because it's confidential, it's private, she's not going to want to come forward if we disclose all this stuff. But they have no problem with the man's sexual history being discussed. And so I'm looking for fairness, I'm looking for equal justice under the law. If you're going to take the men's sort of sexual background, let's say, and I'm not talking about years and years in the past, it's kind of the recent past or in relation to the accuser. You've got to have context on both sides, not just one side. That's my argument.
Right. But what is happening right now is just the
right now there's a strong bias. Yeah, it's a strong bias
or?
Against the male accused. Anything to do with him is fair game. They usually take the mobile phone or his computer and all his digital communications, but the woman's sort of phone is not looked into as much, and we talked about that in a previous video about this new law where they're trying to open it up. Women want to keep their sexual history private, and the courts support that sort of female preference. But I look at things in terms of fairness. If you think about an example where a woman slept with 10 players on a football team, you're the player number 11, she's back at your house, you're thinking, okay, because I know she's done all this with all the other players, why would I not think that I'm the 11th player, she's going to want to have a sexual relationship with me? That's an example of where it might be relevant. Whereas if this woman is the most high virtue, only had one boyfriend her whole life type of girl, you know, if she's sort of wandering the streets at 3 a.m, you know, she's probably not going to be looking for a sexual relationship. So this is a relevant reason to ascertain whether the man is a criminal man or whether he's just, you know, just like a normal guy attracted to women like, you know, most heterosexual men are.
Mm-hmm. Listen, how about the women who have a more extensive sexual history? Does this make them less credible?
No, I don't think it affects their credibility. I think it affects their safety. I mean, if women are sleeping around all over the place with different men, you know, men they haven't vetted, we talked about this before, they don't know them, they're basically strangers, they are at greater risk of assault, in my opinion. I'm trying to prevent that from happening. I want women to be safe, I want them to use good judgment, I want them to go out with men that are fully vetted, and we talked about this a lot of times. Women of low virtue put themselves at risk of assault. So then they end up in these court cases when they've either been assaulted or they felt like they've been assaulted or there's been some sort of incident where she thought this was the love of her life and then he had a relationship with her, he didn't call her, he didn't get back to her, you know, that sort of stuff. He just kind of loved her and left her.
But wait a second, are you saying that if a woman goes out with several men, not at the same time, but does this make her less virtuous?
Well, it makes her less safe. I define virtue as, you know, her value in the sexual marketplace from a man's point of view. If she slept with every guy, you know, in the town, you know, a guy who's looking to marry someone for sexual exclusivity is not going to be choosing her because, you know, she's given away her sexual value for free and now she's expecting this man to pay for it. Then the opposite scenario is true with a woman of high virtue who hasn't had really any romantic relationships with other men, so she's going to be more bonded to that man she gets involved with or marries or whatever it is.
But the things are very different if a man is, you know, dating several women.
They're different, yeah, because men and women are different, Alexandrina, you know.
Yes, but the perception of a person dating several dating different partners, right? It's like it's judged differently if you're a man and if you're a woman.
It's judged differently socially, yeah, I agree with that. For obvious reasons. And but we're talking about court case here. We're talking about the legal world.
Yeah, but you said that there must be equality.
There must be equality under the law. Under the law, yeah. Well, I don't have a problem with men's romantic history being disclosed in court. But we're talking about the woman's sexual history being disclosed in court. And I'm defining that in a context of the messages women give to men about whether they're attracted to that man or that they're receptive to a romantic approach from that man or not. And that's what a judge and jury should be interested in. Right. Is the man a criminal or did the woman give him reason to pursue a romantic relationship with her and then changed her mind about that later and tried to obfuscate that fact?
But you said that in a court, both the history, the sexual history of the man and women must be disclosed, to be fair.
I didn't say it must be disclosed, but if one is disclosed, the other must be disclosed. Yeah, I do agree with that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because you can't have one without the other. It's kind of not given the full picture.
You were talking a bit more about the behavior of a woman, and sometimes that can be leading to these sexual cases. Now, I would like to ask you, what exactly constitutes an appropriate sexual behavior?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm all about female safety, and I'm all about, you know, men pursuing romantic relationships with women in a way that is, you know, legal. But, you know, my argument is that the laws are so ambiguous that men don't really know what is and isn't legal. And of course, it really just comes down to the woman's comments or opinions after the fact. She'll say, oh yeah, this is like a great guy, he's the man of my dreams, or no, this guy's a rapist or a sexual assaulter after the fact. You know, after there's been a relationship that did not work out for her. That's why there's all these false accusations going on. So I think that we need to have, you know, women focused on their safety. In the popular culture, men are blamed as the perpetrators of sexual assault. Women are absolved of all responsibility for their behaviour. My argument is, well, if we live in an age of equality, female empowerment, women have to be responsible for their actions too. There's lots of girls out there that go out, they're sensible, they go out with security, they go home before it gets dark, they're not drinking lots of alcohol. Those women don't tend to get assaulted or get into situations that are where they're at risk because they're sensible people, they're using good judgment. Other women do the opposite, they're drinking lots of alcohol, wearing, provocative clothing, wander in the streets late at night on their own, and then they're going home with strange men late at night on their own. Then they wonder why, they're getting in vulnerable situations. And, I want women to use good judgment so that these events are not occurring because they're so expensive for society to keep prosecuting them,
Mm-hmm. What about inappropriate behavior by men?
Well, that's what I want to find out, because I think the laws are so ambiguous, I can't even answer that question as a man, what is and isn't appropriate, because the ground keeps changing. When I was young, you could go out with women, it wasn't too much of a problem. Now you just look at the woman a wrong way and you're described as a sexist or a racist or a sexual assaulter or, a creep or, you're a sexual harasser or whatever it is. So men don't know the answer to that question. That's what we need to get some really clear clarification on. But of course, the feminist movement does not want to provide clarification. They want to profit from the problem. They want these court cases occurring because it's more money for them, and they're exploiting relationships between young men and young women for cash for them. And I don't like that. I don't think that's I don't think that's healthy for society.
Mm-hmm. Going back to the court cases, do you think women are actually held responsible for, for the sexual provocation?
They're never held responsible for it, no. It's usually kept out of the court. Any provocative behaviour a woman makes is either not discussed or it's explained away as being, this is just what women do, or this is totally normal.
What do you understand by a provocative behaviour?
Well, it's anything that causes sexual arousal in men, that to a degree above and beyond the norm. Let's say women are going out with very revealing clothing where you can see, pretty much most of their body. That would be an example of provocative behaviour. Women flirting with men at a club or in a bar.
But this is not illegal.
Of course it's not illegal, but I'm talking about safety, Alexandrina. I could go out and walk in front of a bus right now and get my, collapse and be squished into the concrete. Okay, that's not illegal, but that's not going to make me feel good, is it, Anyone can do this sort of stuff. I can go walk across the M25 at 7 a.m. in the morning and I'm going to get mowed down. That's not illegal either. But we're talking about sensible behaviour. Rather than women get assaulted and then let us as a society try and figure out who was to blame and have a big court case, why don't we just prevent it from happening in the first place? That's what I'm saying, I mean, all this stuff you hear, I just picked up the newspaper this morning. I was going straight to the sports section as I normally do. And instead I ran into this big article about Cambridge University. The number of sexual assaults in 2014 reported was 65. In 2019, it's 626. So it's almost like a 10-fold increase in 5 years. Why is that happening, If university is so dangerous for women, why don't we have women at women-only universities, men at men-only universities, and then we solve the problem? We just solve the problem,
Do you think that will actually help?
Oh, I do. Well, I think it will solve that problem, wouldn't it, Because then if men and women are segregated, women are not going to be getting assaulted, Alexandrina. That's what I'm all about. If female safety is such a high level of importance for society, which it seems like it is, and I'm on board with that, let's solve the problem.
So do you prefer to segregate them other than to teach emotional and emotional intelligence and learn how to deal with each other?
Yeah, we can teach all that, but we need to focus on safety as a number one, If people aren't acknowledging these lessons, how do we keep women safe? I mean, you go back to the Victorian era, women had chaperones, they weren't allowed out after midnight. There was a big focus on female safety at that time. Now there's less focus on that, and we have all these complaints about assault or about rape. That's not a good situation, is it?
It seems to me that, keeping women safe, it's more like an effect. But we need to look at the cause. And the cause starts with the mentality. I mean, if a woman decides to, wear provocative clothes, it doesn't mean that she is unsafe or she must feel unsafe. She doesn't have to feel, unsafe if she's wearing something provocative.
Well, she doesn't have to feel anything, but it's whether she is or isn't unsafe, Like I said, I can walk down the street with my eyes closed. I might not feel unsafe, but then when I get whacked, I'm going to be breaking bones in my body. I'm going to be stretchered off to an ambulance. I was unsafe even though I felt that I was not. So the feeling is neither here nor there. It's the reality of safety that I'm focused on,
And do you really believe that, by segregating, it doesn't lead to some sort of sexual frustration?
Well, I think there's more than enough sexual frustration in the marketplace nowadays, Alexandrina, because you've got a sort of a deregulated sexual marketplace. So you have a lot of women focused on the sort of top, tier of men, focused on relationships with them. Women always want to date up. It's part of their biological programming. So the more education women have, the smaller the pool of men that are a higher sort of education or social status level. So all these other men down here have, zero or very limited access to women. So I would think they have a high level of sexual frustration. Also on the women's side, you have young women getting a ton of romantic attention from men, but older, less attractive women do not. So there is sexual frustration out there. Whether nothing I say is going to change that this evening.
Guys, let us know, what do you think about this? Do you agree or disagree with David? Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Comment down below everything it's on your mind. So yeah, David, I think your opinions are debatable, to put it nicely.
Well, thanks for saying that, Alexandrina. I appreciate it.
Now, I cannot say that I completely agree with you. This is why I'm keep on asking questions to really understand your point of view. Now, what is also interesting for me is to know, from your perspective, what actions can a woman do to prevent the sexual assault?
Well, that's a really good question, actually, because I think we need to spend a lot more time in schools educating men and women on this topic. And you talked about that, and I agree with it. One of the most important decisions a woman makes in her life is who is the father of her children, who she gets involved with to be that father, to be the provider and protector of her children. And I see so many women now, getting that decision wrong. They get involved with a guy, they have a child, and the guy's already left before the child was born. And I say to these women, why did you choose that guy? How much time did you spend vetting that guy? How many times did he come and meet your family before you became pregnant with his child or before you got married? And they say, oh yeah, we weren't married. I just met him at a club, and then all of a sudden I'm pregnant the next week and all this sort of stuff. They're not vetting men properly, and then they want British taxpayers to come in and pay for that child for 18 years. Because the man has no money. When we find him, he's unemployed, he's a felon, but yet the woman still decided to have a child with that guy. And then in some cases, they'll go and do the same thing with another guy with no money and no job, and another guy with no money and no job. And the taxpayer has to keep coming in. So rather than women do that, why don't we educate women? I mean, it's great to teach women about science and history and geography and maths, but why don't we spend at least as much time teaching them on how to vet men, how to choose the right man? Let's have women speakers come in who have chosen the wrong man and how it affected their life in a negative way. Women that have chosen the right man, how it affected their life in a positive way, and the signs that they found. Same with men. Let's talk to men about marriage, the costs of marriage, the costs of divorce, the costs of getting involved with women that are, not the right woman for them. How to pursue relationships that they're not going to land them in a court case. How to pursue relationships where the woman is not going to give them false accusations. That's how to find and identify false accusers and stay away from them. So men need this equal amount of education through schooling. I think it should be the most time they spend at school learning, because it's such a critical part of their life's journey. It's such an important decision who they get involved with romantically in later life, yeah.
Right, right. It's just a matter of perspective and how do you understand relationships and
yeah, and
how
obviously if you have no
mature
education on it, you know, how are you going to understand it? If you grow up in a family where both parents are split up, or the father and the mother, you know, one of them's abandoned the child early, the child's growing up in a household where there's no role models of what a good romantic relationship looks like. Whereas if a child grows up in a really stable household with loving parents, that's a great case study in how to form a successful family life. Yeah, so I'm a pro-family person. I'm very much in favour of children growing up in a stable family environment with the mother and the father together, focused on the child, and we've got away from that as a country. And I think that's why you find all these problems of people unable to form successful relationships because they don't have any good parental role models. You know, I think it's a sad state of affairs.
Interesting. I'm really curious to know more about the relationship between dating and politics or economics and so on. But I would have to ask you this in a different video. Okay. Is there anything else you want to tell us about the sexual history in a court case?
Well, I think it comes down to the judge at the end of the day. I think there's too much political pressure on the judge to let the woman off the hook. You know, women, all this stuff about you can't blame the women and all this sort of stuff. It doesn't matter about blaming, it doesn't matter about all this. What it matters the most is the accused a criminal or not a criminal? That's what we need to, that's justice, you know. If they're a criminal, they need to be convicted. If they're not a criminal, they need to be set free. And, you know, the more information we can have on the context of the accusation, the better to get real justice. You know, I don't think we should be sugarcoating women's feelings to get to the justice goal, which is the goal of a court case, yeah.
Right. Thank you so much, David, for your time. Again, dear friends, if you agree or disagree, if you have a different perspective, let us know, and the next time I will address your opinions and ask David. David, thank you so much, and see you next time.